want to do a quick video on the currencies for the weekend. Um, it's been my contention for a while now that the ECB has been um, intervening quite often in the currency markets. They want to keep the euro suppressed against the dollar. In the middle of a currency war, it's advantageous for any country to try and weaken their currency against their neighbors, and especially in an environment where Trump is trying to push through trade deals. Uh, it's especially advantageous to offset those trade deals by lowering your currency. So I think for the most part, this rally in the dollar has been fairly artificial, as the ECB has tried to keep the euro suppressed. A big clue is that none of these rallies really get any upside traction. They make very marginal highs, and then the natural forces come back in and drag the market back down, and then it just takes more and more of these interventions to keep the euro suppressed and the dollar propped up. Clearly, this intermediate cycle topped right here, and we're starting an intermediate decline. And I noted in my reports for the premium subscribers that I thought this was going to be a very aggressive intermediate decline, simply because the dollar had been propped up artificially for so long. Kind of the inverse of gold being artificially suppressed. The end result was that the market exploded out of that bear market bottom. You just can't keep markets, force them to do what they're not meant to do for forever. Ultimately, there's consequences. I think that the consequences here is that we're going to have a very damaging ICL. Now, in a natural market, a cycle like this that has right translated really has no business going below this pivot here. But in a market that's been artificially propped up, I would not be at all surprised if the market crashes and takes out this June low. So my feeling is that this was going to turn into a very tumultuous and aggressive decline, but it's unfolding even more rapidly than even I was expecting. A couple days ago, I thought we might come down and maybe test this 200-day moving average by the time the FOMC meeting had arrived, but in only 2 days, we have not only tested it, but we're slicing through the 200 today. So we may have reached the point where the ECB just is not going to be able to keep the dollar propped up anymore and keep the euro suppressed. We really should have another 5 to 8 weeks before this bottoms. And if price comes down and takes out this June low during that period, then we'll know that we kind of reached the end of the interventions. Central banks are just not going to be able to keep this market propped up any longer, or keep the euro suppressed any longer. And ultimately, I think this is, as I've said before, I think this is the beginning stage of inflation. There has to be consequences to all these years of quantitative easing, and we're starting it again. And a lower dollar during the initial phase of an inflation is usually positive for everything. Everything tends to rally together. So as I said in my last video, it's not an either or proposition. If gold goes down, stocks have to go up, or if stocks go up, gold has to go down. That isn't necessarily true, especially during the beginning stages of an inflation. Everything can go up together. So I will be watching the currencies closely as we progress through this intermediate decline. And if we take out this low, then I think it's game over for the dollar, and no amount of intervention at that point is going to be able to keep this propped up any longer.